Charles, happy Derby, everybody. Love being here always. One of the highlights of my Derby week. I like to refer to it as my Rotary Derby address and Charlie Ober's stress test because I always give him a thrill. You want to get him ready to be sure he handles the photo finish on Derby Day, so it's a good thing to get him ready. Well, here we are. We're just about there. Kentucky Derby Day, 141 consecutive years, Lord willing. On Saturday, we will extend that string that has been uninterrupted since 1875. And we've had a lot of notable runnings of this race through the years, some spectacular runnings, some spectacular winners, some unforgettable moments, some unforgettable blunders, just so many mileposts through those years. And maybe this year is going to be another one of those. Certainly a lot of talk about going into this race, about the horses that were entered last night. We got 20 horses in the gate, 2 waiting on the outside for somebody to sneeze or step on a rock by Friday morning so they can get into the race. You can never take an easy breath even after the horses are entered in the race. Hoping for a boy. He was hoping for a boy that would go on and go become the next broomstick, so he named her Regret. All Regret would do is go on to win the Kentucky Derby, become one of the greatest horses of the 20th century. She won 9 of 11 starts. Never lost to a female. She beat the boys on numerous other occasions, including a race in her 4-year-old year in which she beat 2 Derby winners, including Old Rosebud. She was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And Regret is one of the great misnomers in the history of sports, naming her for that because of the disappointment in her gender. But another important thing about her is she went beyond the realm of sport. She went beyond the realm of horse racing, and she became a national celebrity and a national symbol for women who were seeking the right to vote, women who were looking for more rights and to raise their stature in the world in 1915. Remember that. She became a symbol, and for suffragettes and others, she was proof, and they pointed to her as what a woman can do if given the opportunity. So she went far beyond the world of sport, the Kentucky Derby, and we saw it with Secretariat in the 1970s. Those of us who were around to witness that, he became a national figure there at the end of the Vietnam War, and a positive that appeared not only on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but Time and Newsweek. That's what a good horse can do for you. But I do love, there's only been 2 other fillies win the Derby, and it took 65 years for another to do it. Genuine Risk in 1980, and Winning Colors in 1988. Regret is special, and she is special not only to the Derby, she is special to this city and this region because of her role in building what has happened with the Kentucky Derby and the horse industry. And I think it's an incredibly special anniversary. We're having family members of the jockey, Joe Notter, who rode her 100 years ago, and Mary Lou Whitney. I think some of you probably know Mary Lou Whitney, who's a racing figure and a socialite and philanthropist. She's part of the Whitney family that owned Regret, and she's going to be at our track and will also be our First Lady of the Oaks on Oaks Day. So we're looking forward to talking about that Derby and celebrating the legacy of Regret. And again, I'm hoping that this group, this exceptional group of horses this year, will have that beyond racing, beyond sports impact, and just may. Again, those 8 horses I mentioned earlier, they're 8 good ones, incredibly consistent. They've done everything right. They look great on the track in the morning. They run great races. They run fast races. They all seem to be coming here on the way up. But still, there's a clear favorite, and his name is American Pharaoh. Trained by Bob Baffert. His owner, Ahmed Zayat, is hoping that he can end his string of Derby luck. He's had 3 runner-up finishes in the Kentucky Derby, but has never been able to get over the top. American Pharaoh, lovely pedigree. His father's the horse that Mind That Bird beat in the Kentucky Derby. He finished second in 2009, but he has done everything well. He moves perfectly. He's got great speed, great ability, and he's ridden by the same jockey who rode California Chrome to victory last year, and Victor Espinoza. And Bob Baffert, who has won 3 Derbies but none since 2002, is thinking awfully big things with this horse. And if he runs his best race, if he stays out of trouble, runs to his top performance, I think he'll be tough to beat. But there's also a possibility that he's not the best horse in his barn. Baffert has a horse named Dortmund, who is unbeaten, 6-0. He's the second choice in the morning line odds. He is huge. He is, if the sun were out today and he walked by, you wouldn't see the sun. I mean, he's a solar eclipse everywhere where it walks. He's just massive. If you're familiar with horses, you love horses, he stands well over 17 hands high. Not a big hulking guy. He's not necessarily Shaquille O'Neal. More like Anthony Davis. He's kind of long-limbed, and he's not the kind of horse you really envision getting in a lot of trouble during a race. He's pretty nimble for a horse his size. And again, unbeaten, and Baffert trains him, and Although the one he talks about more is American Pharaoh, no doubt, but this horse is very talented, and he has a win at Churchill Downs, which his stablemate does not. Carpe Diem is a horse that won the Toyota Bluegrass, a race that matters again now since Keeneland's gone back to regular dirt on its racetrack for the last few years when it was a poly track race, a synthetic track race. It was just a puncher's chance to get in the Kentucky Derby. I love the Bluegrass, but it just was not a serious race when you're talking about Derby horses during those years. A Derby winner came out of it, 2007 winner Street Sense. He came out of that race and won the Derby, but I'll tell you how good he was. I picked him to win the Derby, and he won. That horse could carry some weight. So but still he got beat in the Bluegrass Stakes in a race, and the horse that beat him, he whipped by 16 lengths on Derby Day. So again, it's a race that matters, and he ran a very, very big race, a deserved one of the favorites. Not a good post position. He drew number 2. The only one that's worse in the field, if you polled every trainer out there, they'd say, I'll take number 2 over number 1. That's all. You can get into too much trouble down there. So he's in a little bit of trouble in terms of his post position, but he's trained by Derby winner Todd Pletcher, ridden by Derby winner Johnny Velasquez, and he's a major contender. Out of California, a couple of other horses, one named Firing Line, who I think is a horse that maybe has a chance to score an upset at pretty solid odds. He ran twice against Dortmund. He lost by a head each time. The second race, he might have moved a hair early. He got in front about a length, and then Dortmund dropped his head and fought back. That's the difference between Dortmund and American Pharaoh right now. Is Dortmund has been in the fights, and he showed he loves it. He just drops that head and runs and wins. Firing Line, though, has been terrific. He's ridden by Gary Stevens, who you'll remember has won 3 Kentucky Derbies, retired a few years back with an injury, came back 2 years ago at the age of 50 and promptly won the Preakness, and has been one of our top riders since then. So at the age of 52, not the oldest jockey to win a Kentucky Derby. Bill Shoemaker was that in 1986 aboard Ferdinand, but he was 54 that day. But Gary Shirley in the neighborhood and got a big chance on Firing Line, who looks terrific. Just on looks at the racetrack, you just know he's doing well. He looks like a little package of dynamite ready to explode. And he's a horse I think will run very well. We have a horse from abroad, from Dubai. His name is Mubtaij. He is a horse for the new millennium. He is truly an international horse. He is bred in Ireland, owned by a sheikh in Dubai, trained by a great trainer from South Africa, and he's ridden by a jockey named Christophe Soumillon, who was born in Belgium and has been a 6-time champion rider in France, and he's never run in the Kentucky Derby. The only thing about this horse that would say Kentucky is if he wears roses on Saturday. So he's going to try to add that collection. And he won a $2 million race in Dubai last time so easily he could have run backwards down the stretch and gotten it done. I think he's a big contender. You know, we've had for years several horses from Dubai coming over to win. They've never been close in the race, but this is one I think could really, really run well. Not owned by Sheikh Mohammed of Dubai, but he does have another horse in the race, and that is Frosted. The question, I know I've said this to you guys before, but the question I get more than any other coming up to the Kentucky Derby is not pedigree. How's the trainer doing? How's the horse doing? How fast is this horse? What has he been doing? What does he need to do to win? The question I get more often in the days leading up to the Kentucky Derby is this crucial, very important question, that is, who is the gray horse? The gray horse is Frosted, and he's very good. He's owned by Sheikh Mohammed's Godolphin outfit, but did not train in Dubai. He is trained by a Lexingtonian named Kieran McLaughlin, one of the great trainers in our game. He has a runner-up finish in the Kentucky Derby to his credit. I think he's a great trainer, but even a greater champion as a human being. Kieran received a diagnosis some years back that he was suffering from multiple sclerosis. He has actively attacked that issue, and he's had a wonderful medication regimen. He's at the track every day. And when he's not working to get horses to the winner's circle and win a Kentucky Derby, he's working to build awareness and support for multiple sclerosis research. He's a tremendous person and a great human being who's going to win a Kentucky Derby. And it might just be this guy. He's been kind of up and down. He didn't come to the race exactly like he'd like. He had a race in Florida that was too bad to be true. They sat back and got comfortable with how he was doing. They did a little throat surgery just in case he had a breathing problem, and came back with one of the most brilliant races of the spring in the Wood Memorial. And I think he's coming up the race, maybe accidentally so, but coming up at the right start, at the right spot. Then there's a horse named Upstart that has a big chance. He has run well with the members of his crop throughout the year and throughout last year, frankly. He's been near the top of the crop always. Didn't draw a great post. He's in the 19, and that's not the best for him, but doesn't mean he can't win out of there. And then there's Materiality, another Todd Pletcher trained horse who's out of the same stable as Carpe Diem. Materiality is 3-0 lifetime. He won the Florida Derby, but he's got a little history to top. For The last horse to win the Kentucky Derby without racing at 2 was a good while back. Now, for horses, the universal birthday in terms of competition is January 1st. That's how we determine 2-year-olds. They all turn 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. They all turn from 2 to 3 on the first day of the year, although some of them will not have had their actual birthday until after this Derby was over. Physically, some of those horses aren't yet 3, but they're 3-year-olds for purposes of racing. And the last horse to win the Kentucky Derby without having the benefit of a race at 2 was a horse named Apollo, and his year was 1882. He's got some history to overcome. Somebody's going to do it. He's ridden by Javier Castellano, one of our best jockeys, and I think he's got a chance, but I'm not one that's in favor of that lack of experience. But he's a good-looking colt, and we'll see what happens. Some other long shots to watch. We have a Louisville cheering interest. In fact, a couple of Kentucky cheering interests. One is It's a Knockout. And let me suggest to you that It's a Knockout is the biggest hunch bet in the history of the Kentucky Derby, because what else happened Saturday? Mayweather-Pacquiao. If you don't bet this horse, and he wins, you will feel like the stupidest person on the planet. Here's what you have to do. Go in, when you go to the racetrack or you go online to bet, whatever, just bet $2 on him, get it out of the way. You'll have the hunch bet there, and if he's ready, you'll be able to tell your friends, oh, yeah, it's an easy game. That's what you tell them. Also, there's a cheering interest because he's owned by a group called Starlight Partners, which is Louisville-based. And one of those Louisvillians, a lot of you know in here, Ed Glasscock, local attorney, civic leader, owns. I'm not sure how much of him he owns, but he owns enough that he'll be in the winner's circle if he wins the Kentucky Derby. His son Clint is a member of that group, and Jack Wolf, a St. Xavier grad who went to make his fortune in the world of finance, has come back to manage that partnership. And again, remember what I said earlier about Old Rosebud. It's been 101 years since we've had a Louisville-based ownership, either an individual or team, win the Kentucky Derby. So something to cheer for. Plus, I want to see Glasscock because we come from the same hometown, Litchfield, Kentucky, and I'm pretty confident if that horse wins the Derby that Ed will just levitate from his seat all the way over the track right to the winner's circle. I've not seen one of those literally, but I think it could happen. But again, some cheering interest there, as there is for international stars owned by Ken and Sarah Ramsey, big figures in the Kentucky racing and breeding industry from Nicholasville, Kentucky. A couple of long shots to watch. I like a horse named Bolo. Bolo's from California, primarily a grass horse, nearly black in color. He's not officially black, but he's really, really dark and a really good-looking horse. He comes from California, mostly a grass runner, but I love grass horses running on our track. I think they, for some reason, I can't begin to explain it, but grass horses love our main track at Churchill, and they can move up and run big races. And this guy's been beaten in his last couple, but I think he's a significant player. So that's kind of the field for the Derby. Just a note about the Oaks. I think the Oaks is a great race. 14 horses in there, 14 fillies. Don't know that they are quite the quality of the Colts, or at least at this point look like they're quite the quality of the Colts, but there are some nice horses in there. Stellar Wind is the favorite. Larry Jones, a Hopkinsville native who has won 2 Kentucky Oaks, has 2 fillies in there. One of them owned by former Governor Brereton Jones. He's already won 2 Kentucky Oaks for Brereton Jones, so the Jones boys are dangerous here. And then there are a couple of long shots. There's a gray filly named Shook Up. I think is going to run huge, and she's going to be 25-1. And the filly I like to win it is a filly named Puka, who is trained by Bill Mott, our all-time leading trainer and stakes winner at Churchill Downs. Been at our track for 25 years, and he is 0 for the Derby and the Oaks. He's going to win one of these someday. And Puka is she's only won 1 of 6 starts, but I think she sets up perfect for this race. Going to be a ton of speed. She's going to be running late. And I'm much better in the Kentucky Oaks than I am in the Kentucky Derby. So go ahead and don't draw the line through that one yet, as you're about to. So, will it be an historic Kentucky Derby? Will American Pharoah prove to be that horse that not only wins the Derby, but steps forward, goes on to perhaps win the Triple Crown, go on to do the great things that so many horses have done? I look at him every day, and I think he does have all that potential to be a great horse, and he may live up to that. Doesn't mean you're going to win the Kentucky Derby. A lot of great horses have run in the Kentucky Derby and never gotten there. 1953, we had a horse named Native Dancer, one of the top horses of the 20th century. He was 21 for 22 lifetime. Only lost by this far in the Kentucky Derby when he had a race that was like the worst day on the Watterson Expressway that you could possibly imagine. Everywhere he went, the door was slammed shut, flying at the finish, but didn't get there. His trainer, Bill Winfrey, said, you shouldn't run a race that Native Dancer can't win. That's how tough it is to win the Kentucky Derby. Damascus, one of the best horses of the 20th century. He was beaten in the 1967 Kentucky Derby. Never got close. Went on to be Horse of the Year and win the Woodward Stakes over the best older horse in the country by 10 lengths that fall. Didn't get it done on Derby Day. the race's history is filled. Even 1957, generally agreed upon as the best field ever to run in the Kentucky Derby, although it was only 10 or 11 horses. We had 3 champions in there. Gallant Man, who was Horse of the Year that year. Bold Ruler, later would be the sire of Secretariat, and also a Horse of the Year. Round Table, who would be a grass champion, and they all lost to Iron Liege, who was the second best horse from Calumet Farm, and their favorite, General Duke, got scratched the morning of the race, and the little guy, the understudy, won. So we're full of stories about champions that don't get there. I do think this one's going to be awfully tough to beat, and I will give you the surest bet outside of the for you cynics in here, and I know my Derby picking reputation was tossed around before I got here, and after I got here, frankly, and it's well deserved. But I'm here to tell you that the cinch of this Kentucky Derby could be Carpe Diem, despite the bad post position. It is because of this. I participate in a couple of polls throughout the spring, rating the Derby horses and who you like, who you think's coming up to the race well. And for 5 months, I've had Carpe Diem atop my poll. He'd won 4 or 5 races, did everything he could possibly do. His workouts were all good, did everything right. And I was prepared to stick with him until Sunday, when I saw American Pharaoh work at Churchill Downs. I looked at him, watched him, was amazed by him, and was immediately troubled. I sat down and said, should I try to get cute and beat this horse in the Kentucky Derby? A lot of great horses have lost the Kentucky Derby. Or should I believe my eyes? Should I believe what I saw? And ladies and gentlemen, the eyes have it. I've picked my top choice is American Pharaoh just because of what is possible. Again, he's never been tested. He's never gone 1.25 miles. He's never faced anything like the crowd of 167,000 and the noise and chaos that creates. But nobody else has that experience either. And I know he's going to be in the right spot. Bob Baffert cheered when he got that outside 18 post position last night. He was so confident that he echoed Big Brown, who won back in 2008. Big Brown took the 20 hole when it was available because his trainer believed he was just that good. Go on, go on. We're fine from there. Bob said I would have happily taken the 20 with this guy. He just wants to sit out there, cruise along, and let Espinoza ask the question at the head of the stretch, and we'll see if he answers. And I had there's a man I respect very much out in California, a clocker named Gary Young, who's watched horses, bought horses, sold horses for 35 years. California horses at the top of any given year. He says he's the best horse I've seen in 35 years. We'll know more next week, or not next week, the next few days. But I went ahead and took American Pharaoh out the top because I love what I've seen. I love what is possible, although I freely admit he doesn't have to win. My second horse is Mubtaij from Dubai. I think he's going to be cruising down the lane. A lot of these wonderfully talented horses have the same running style. Somebody's going to run out of gas. They all want to run third in the early going. That's going to be occupied for, so there's several that are not going to be able to do what they want to do. But Mubtaij will be flying from off the pace, and I think he's got a great chance to be the first Dubai raced horse to win the Kentucky Derby. And I also think in there Dortmund is an obvious choice. Will not be surprised if he gets there. And Firing Line and Frosted are my other two that I think could run well at prices. But I'm going to go with a horse that I think could be a horse that maybe we'll be talking about 100 years from now. The Kentucky Derby is an amazing race, and I call it the most democratic with a small D sporting event in the world. Because when you go into that gate, if you've got the horse on the day, it doesn't matter who you're next to. It doesn't matter who owns that horse. It doesn't matter who trains that horse. If you get the trip, if you got the talent, if you have a little luck and you get there first, it is yours, and nobody's going to take it away from you, and it's the only one. You'll be the only horse that wins that race. A lot of great ones haven't gotten there over the years, and just as likely, with all those great horses in here, wouldn't be stunned by a 50-1 shot. But this year's group, I think American Pharaoh is the best of those horses. And again, when you get in that starting gate, anything can happen if you have the right horse. You can go on to win a Triple Crown like Citation or Secretariat. You could be like Mind That Bird and never win again, but you win by 7 lengths on the day at 50-1. Or you could be a girl facing the boys in the most important running of the Kentucky Derby and changing the face of our sport, our event, and our race, and setting it on a course for where we are today 100 years later. Thanks a lot, everybody. I really appreciate it. Happy Derby.
Thank you. We've got time for just a couple of questions while you're filling out your tickets. Anyone have any quick questions?
I just want to say, anyone who wants to wish me, congratulate me on the weather, not yet. I'll give you the truest rule of thoroughbred racing and probably meteorology. If it seems too good to be true, it usually is. So I'm just holding my breath for the next couple of days. But it looks good, and we hope to see you guys out there. Anybody?
Well, good. Thank
All
you
right.
all.